Hello everybody, this is Fred Beal with LogDovetailJig.com, and today I want to talk about a couple of things on my website. I frequently get a lot of questions about Dovetail Jig Plans. So first I'll tell you a little bit about exactly what it is I offer on the website, and then I'll get into some of those frequently asked questions. So essentially about 10 years ago I came up with a design for a simple plywood jig that I could customize the dimensions for, and you would mount this jig on the end of a log, and the jig would guide the chainsaw to make those cuts to give you perfect dovetail notches without having to work out the geometry. So I've done all that work for you. The way my website's set up, you basically specify the log dimensions, the width, the height of the log, and the gap distance between the log, and I'll calculate custom dimensions and send you jig plans. The cost is $25, and with those plans and about $75 worth of materials, you can build your own jigs, reuse them many times. Very easy to build, simple carpentry tools, and you can use those jigs to build your log cabin with square timbers, D-shaped logs, two-sided logs that have natural round tops and bottoms. So there's a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. Okay, now I'll talk about some frequently asked questions that I get on the website before people order plans. One of the questions is, can I build with green logs? And over the years, many cabins have been built with green logs. It takes thick lumber, timbers, a long time to dry. Often people are not willing to wait for 3 years, 2 years for their timbers to dry. So yes, you can build with green logs. You do have to plan for the settlement that's going to occur as the logs dry. In addition to the logs changing dimension, there may be some twisting, some bowing, but those kinds of issues can be worked through, so don't necessarily discourage people from building with green logs if that's what you need to do. In a perfect world, we could all build with kiln-dried, perfectly dimensioned material, but that's also, you end up with a house that looks like a factory-produced product too if you do that. So I think there's a lot of appeal to having a more natural look, and if you end up with a little bit of bowing or twisting, try to solve those problems and still maintain that rustic look I think that a lot of people want when they're going to build a log cabin. So another question I get is splicing logs. So if you need to build with longer cabin dimensions than maybe the log size that you have available, can you splice logs together? Yes, there are ways to splice logs together. I'm not going to get into the details in this video, but I'll put up a couple of screenshots here on the website. There's some free how-to information that'll tell you a couple of different ways to splice logs, and yeah, you can build cabins much larger than the longest log size that you have available to you. Another question, can I use all round logs? So in this example here, these logs are four-sided. Sometimes I'll get requests to design plans for jigs that could work on a totally round log that has not been milled at all yet. So the way the jig system works, the jig's attached to the interior face of the log. So they would attach to this face, and that face needs to be flat. So it doesn't necessarily have to be milled full length of the log, but at least the first 2 feet to give the jig a flat surface to mount to. Likewise on the other end, it needs to be flattened, and those two flat areas need to be in the same plane or the notches will not fit very well. So probably the biggest question I get is, can I build with zero gap? So often people will want to have zero gap between the logs, and the answer is yes. I can design jigs for any configuration, zero gap, no problem. Couple things to keep in mind if you're interested in building with zero gap. The log dimensions need to be very consistent. So if you're going to build with 6x12 timbers, they need to all be 6x12, and I can design for that. And when you construct the cabin, you'll have 0 gap. Now again, if there's shrinkage over time, any twisting, bowing, warping, that 0 gap is probably going to change, and you'll probably open up gap in places, and now you'll have very small cracks, and you'll ultimately probably need to go in and fill those cracks. Lots of people build that way, and I don't really have a problem with it, but my preference personally is to build with at least a 1/2 inch gap, preferably a 1/2 to a 1 inch gap. And along with that, you'll obviously need support in the logs. If you have a long span, a long length log, and you have a gap in the log, you can place blocks of wood recessed behind this chinking that'll give that support, but allow the logs to have that gap, and the flexible chinking in the gap will help accommodate some of that movement. This is flexible material, and it'll stretch and give and keep a tight seal throughout the seasons and as your logs shrink and dry. Occasionally, if you build with green logs, really green logs, you'll get some shrinkage that actually might tear away some of the chinking in a few places. This cabin was built with fairly dry logs, and I basically had no problems with the chinking, even though the logs did move a little after the cabin was built. Other cabins, I've had some drying effects that resulted in just a little bit of the chinking pulling away, and that's really easily repaired. You don't have to strip out all the old chinking and re-chink it. You basically just fill that new gap with the same product, so it's not a big deal to go in and touch up chinking. So I just wanted to cover a few of those things today. We look forward to making some more videos in the future. This is really the first YouTube video I've done, so hopefully you like it, and hopefully you check out my webpage. And if you're interested in building a cabin, look through the webpage. I've got a lot of pictures, a lot of how-to information on there, and I've got a lot of examples of cabins my customers have built over 10 years plus of me designing jig plans for them. Check out the website, and if you like the video, please subscribe to it. Thank you.